morning. Monday morning here in Pittsburgh. In January, it's cold outside. Not as cold as it has been for the last few weeks, but cold enough that I'm bundled up a little bit here. Today, I want to talk about making a decision. And I'm not going to talk about it like as a list of pros and cons or where to seek advice. I want to talk about the condition of being a decision. And I'm going to use a poem by Robert Frost. Right? I'm going to read the Road Not Taken and talk through that poem again as an experience of being a decision, not so much as what to look for to make the right decision, or in fact, if there is such a thing as a right decision. And I'm inspired by this today by this book, Meditations for Mortals. I put my name on it because I'm reading this with my wife, and she has a copy of her own. I want to make sure that my copy is... Anyway, Oliver Burkeman has written this book where each day there's a little couple pages to read talking about embracing your limitations. Now, there's some context for that. Oliver Burkeman a few years ago wrote a book called 4,000 Weeks, and it comes out of sort of the productivity mindset, but with a really interesting slant that we are finite. We are thrown into the life that we have with the constraints and conditions that come along with that. We don't choose when we're born. We don't choose who our parents are. And we don't live forever. And the idea that with a different tool or approach, we could have an increasing list of items that all get completed, that is not what Oliver Burkeman is about. Oliver Burkeman is about recognizing the finite time, and with that in mind, understanding what's important and using that to drive what we do. There are obviously things that just have to get done. I have to work. I have to make sure that my performance at my job is good. But then what? I think about this a lot as I keep track of the creative projects that I want to do. I don't ever want to be in a situation where I feel like I want like a performance. I want my music to be played, but why? Because I want that connection. Well, the first part of that connection is being open to the writing of it, the process. Anyway, Oliver talks about this Robert Frost poem, which I'm just going to start reading. But remember that I'm interested in what it feels like to be making a decision, and even more than that, what it feels like to be the decision, because in this poem, there's a position, there's a traveler at a crossroads, and as I read through, listen, we don't know how the traveler got to this position, to this place. We don't know why they are going the way they're going. We don't know why they end up choosing one or the other. And then at the end, and this is the insight that Oliver brought at the end, very famous line at the end of the poem, I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And suggests that that can lead to a reading of the poem that emphasizes nonconformity. When as we read it, what it really is sort of the bookend. You open up with this position of uncertainty, and you end in this position of much later in time recreating a narrative. So here we go. And at no point in there do we say good or bad, right or wrong. And at no point in here do we say uh, that I've made I've made a decision. There's a vibrancy of the question of free will in this poem. I frame it that way deliberately because um, I'm not sure that free will fits with this poem. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. I imagine those beautiful linden trees that we see here in Pittsburgh, but also like in Lothlorien. Right? Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other. Right? I stared off to the left. For some reason, when I read this poem, um, there's a left and a right, and we take the right. This has to be referencing the Hercules myth, right? The choice of Hercules, a path of ease, luxury, fame, fortune, or path of virtue. Without any of those, which one would you take? Sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Right? There's I don't know, Robert Frost wasn't a quantum physicist, but there's a quantum element here, right? Can I be in two places at the same time as one connected quanta of energy? Can I be both a wave and a particle? Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. So, suggests that the road to the right in my reading is the less traveled road. Though it was grassy and wanted wear. Oh, sorry. Because it was grassy and wanted wear. That's the only because. That's the only clear statement of intent in the entire poem. I did this because this. Right? Because it was grassy and wanted wear, I took the other. Though, as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. I'm very grateful to Oliver Burkeman for bringing this because I read this poem many times. But it's really striking this this position that the traveler is in. Maybe keep the idea of quantum unreliability in mind until the decision has been made. But what is the decision? Try to think of making a choice. Sam Harris in his Waking Up app, where actually he interviews Oliver Burkeman. Oliver has a series as well on that app. Separate from that, Sam talks about free will, and the exercise is think of a movie, any movie, and watch the process of thinking of that movie. Did you think of that movie, or did a movie just, right? You could no more have said what that movie was going to be before you thought it than you could have anticipated what the end of the universe is going to be like. We have this correlation of experience, and the road not taken. Look, in our lives, there are clearly marking points, right? The option to get married, to take a certain job, to buy a house, to not buy a house, to travel. There are large markers that really clearly set aside other options. But there's no room for regret in that model. Having taken the road, having taken the choice, those other decisions are now part of the, what's the word, effluent, like a chemtrail around you. Mm. These untaken decisions are like chemtrails around you. At a smaller level, so maybe not at the decade level, but at the year level, coming down, even down to the day by day, we are making constant choices that rule out other choices. I go to Starbucks instead of, we have a chain here called Yin's, or I go to Yin's instead of Starbucks. I'm never going to drink that Starbucks coffee this morning because I drank from Yin's. In this moment, here, now, as I'm speaking, I'm ruling out other words, other choices. But I feel like there's a real position, a real posture where we can live as if we are Feynman tracks. Right? The particle exists with all possible tracks until one collapses, the vector collapses. Are there multiverse? Is the universe infinite? Where literally any possible combination has happened, is happening, already happened, will happen. I find that particular thought less inspiring, and rather than just feeling that the path I've taken brings along with it the paths I didn't take. Right. Okay, so though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Right? Neither of these paths are particularly heavily trafficked. And at this point now, neither one really seems particularly compelling, either because it's easy or because it's particularly difficult. Oh, I kept the first for another day, memory, right? Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. So I can see him moving down and thinking, if this doesn't work out, I'll go back to that same point and take the left. But think of this, right? If you can come back to the same point to take the same decision, if everything is the same, your thoughts, your emotions, the history of the universe to that point is the same, you cannot do anything other than make the choice that you already made. If you are making a different choice, it's not the same. You're not back to make the same decision. You're not in the same river. I doubted if I should ever come back. But he kept that idea. So imagine this sort of accumulation and gradual dissolution, gradual erasure of these other paths, just like a chemtrail in the sky. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. This is the point that Oliver really highlights, that we're hearing this with understanding that in the future, the story will be told of this choice. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So the telling with a sigh, we're in this moment today, we make the choice, knowing that far in the future, or not far in the future, close in the future, we'll look back and apply a story to that decision. So there's this, in the poem, there's this indecision about making a decision. Indeterminacy. There's an indeterminacy about the description of taking the definition, of taking the decision, of defining the decision. There's an indeterminacy about defining the decision. And that sense, can we hold that as we move through life? Because it's not always a clear left-right. Sometimes it's just taking a breath. And with that breath, all the unbreathed breaths are left unbreathed. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, subscribe, etc. Excuse me, and keep your wits about you.